like, done up nicely or all that stuff or have filters and everything. I'm going live, explain a bit of our story. So our daughter was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 1, which is the number one genetic killer in infants, requires medical care, attention. We became proactive. To become proactive in her life was a big fight right from the beginning. 15 years of advocating for her rights of life, advocating for the things she needs or the human rights of everything. We basically have been told if you're genetic, you don't matter. Your numbers are too low. The focus is mainly heart and cancer. To hold our daughter, let her go, let her die. Yesterday, my ex had been admitted at the Grey Nuns Hospital, not feeling well or things like that. He was ambulanced in. He was clammy, sweaty all over his body, really not feeling well, dehydrated, things like that. And as sick as he came in and he was laying on the floor, we have the video of that actually, or pictures of him laying on the floor because he's so sick and he's so weak. I had a discrepancy with one of the nurses on his care, and she, as soon as I left, it wasn't long after I left, she went and took him on as a patient and took over from another nurse and told him he's getting kicked out and he's fine and blah, blah, blah. And he could barely stand this morning. He's dry heaving all day, peeing, obviously dehydrated, very dehydrated to the peeing to the point it looks like tea. It is how our system is. Then, the amount of what's happening to our children right now, even our medical family. I'm a medical family. So we've had a daughter with spinal muscular atrophy type 1. Then we had a son born with Williams syndrome and hydrocephalus. Combination, both random, never heard of before. And he was about 3 months old, and we had been told, now this is the catchy part, I have worked for long-term care services. I have been trained by Alberta Health Services. I have been working in the industry since I was about 19 and decided to take on different tasks due to the fact of what I was seeing done to human rights. So much as like, oh, everybody, we got to take everybody to the tub room and we got to put them on a commode. And wow, yeah, that's how I started, where everybody went to the bathroom on a commode looking at each other. So they called it potting them in the tub room. So then we go from there, and we are now on a flip side of the services myself, having to fight for what my child needs, having to fight hospital ethics. My son had symptoms like clammy, sweaty, pale, cringing. And I was told I'm a paranoid mother, hypochondriac. Brought him in a couple times. I says, I think my son is sick. He's showing the symptoms of it. He's coughing, he's sweaty, he's pale, he's clammy. Wow. I was told that I'm a hypochondriac, I'm paranoid. I was even told at one point that I might get locked up because I'm so crazy. And it turned out that my son went in, and just as the doctor was telling me that I don't think your son is that sick, he went into a cardiac arrest. And my son lasted 4 days on what they call an ECMO machine, which is a life-saving device. And this life-saving device, it's your last resort of life-saving device. And on Father's Day, June 20th. So we lost our son on Father's Day due to a viral pneumonia that attacked his heart as the autopsy reports came in. But yet I was called a hypochondriac. And then I was told, well, he's complex. But yet you could clearly visibly see the symptoms and see how pale he was and see he was sick. And he was never admitted under his circumstances, which he should have been. Williams syndrome alone has heart disease and stuff, and he should have been evaluated or sent in for observation at least, and wasn't. My own daughter, it's been incriminating, a long incriminating situation. Myself, I went through thyroid cancer, and that spread to my lymph nodes. And during radiation, my right breast cells started reacting. So I flared up on the right side of my breast. and was told, oh, it's thyroid disease. It's only thyroid cancer. You're fine. You're going to have like 40 years, blah, 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 as long as it doesn't spread. And you're great. It didn't spread. Well, it did spread. And when I woke up from surgery, I started feeling my neck and I was like, this doesn't feel normal. During radiation, my right breast swelled up like Dolly Parton and flaring and everything. And yeah, some cancer cells that were being attacked in my right breast. So we surpassed that. Then I had a brain bleed in 2020. August 6th, I come into the same hospital here, actually. The same one where my ex-spouse came into yesterday. And I was told to go home. It's only simple migraine. Go home, come back 4 days later. Sitting in the emergency room for 2 hours until my mom stood up and was like, she's having a brain bleed. So we go in, finally somebody pushes me in, and I've got these nurses here at the Grey Nun. This one nurse comes in and she's like, stop crying and stop screaming. You're so pathetic. It's like just a simple migraine. And she's like, God, you're being such a hypochondriac, and going on and just mocking me, and goes outside. You can hear her with the other nurse actually mocking me. I'm a hypochondriac and it's just a migraine, and God, I'm such a baby, and all this stuff she was going on. I go for a CT scan. I come back out and 2 paramedics are waiting for me to transfer me to the U of A. So coming from there, the U of A, being transferred to that hospital because they wanted to send me over there for a brain surgery for a brain bleed. I was actually having a subcranial hemorrhage brain bleed right here. Actually, it's right exactly there because I can feel it daily. So I had a brain bleed that people typically die from, is what I was told. A rare brain bleed people typically die from. That I survived and surpassed. That brain bleed caused us so much trauma in my family. So you go and you start thinking about all the things that we have been through and we've been hit with. Our first child together has a terminal diagnosis. We surpassed that by fighting, for her rights of proactive life and things like that, because you can do more for our kids with SMA type 1. We call them SMA angels. Our story is quite long, and I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail because there's so much dynamic into it that it's spider webs and spider webs and spider webs. But just her rights of what we had to fight for, her rights of education. I can't currently put her name on here, but if you just check my last name, Lohin, and you were to put my first name, Lisa, into the Google search, you will see that we've had to fight for her rights of education, right for her fights for oxygen. It's unbelievable. So during my process of the cancer, what happened to our family? So I had 2 surgeries and radiation, and in between that, my ex-spouse was working oil and sands in Alberta, and the economy started crashing. So he gets a job, hits a layoff in 2 weeks. Gets another one, back on the board about, a month later, whatever. Then has to take some time off work to take care of my health because we have a daughter with life support. So he's taking care of me with cancer, taking care of our daughter. And each of my 2 surgeries, plus me going through radiation, I was quarantined for 7 days. And all the appointments and stuff. So in between, he had another layoff, trying to work. So he worked and had another layoff. Then he got hit with a 3rd layoff, gets another job. And finally, the 4th layoff, he ended up being laid off for 6 months. Really set us back financially with him being the only income supporter. And then we started building our lives back up after my cancer. Just within that year, we're starting to finally go on a right track. And then I got hit with a brain bleed. That brain bleed had killed my family, destroyed us, tore my family all apart, but the stress from it, the impact it had. We ended up losing our home. In result, instead of being put into medical, instead of us as a family being put into medical emergency, it's been so much stress. Emergency housing so that one of us could at least tend to the care for our child. So yes, there has been family violence that has started aggressing between me and Hugo as things started escalating. Stress, 15 years of being played against each other. Like, I'll give you an example. Our daughter had, I walked in one morning, and this is when we were starting to try to trust the hospital, take care of our child. I had these bags in my hand, walk into the room, it's around 8 a.m., and I see her heart rate's 145. She's crying, she's red in the face, and I know something's wrong. So I start looking at her head to toe, start feeling if I can see anything, and I see she's a little red on the leg, so I feel, and there's a lot of heat radiating from it. Her right leg, I believe it was. And the nurse is like, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. So she goes and she runs to the desk, gets charge nurses, tells them that I'm freaking out and that I'm causing all this havoc. So then they eventually call her dad, tell her dad I'm going crazy, and spent the day telling her dad that I'm crazy and I need all this mental help and there's something wrong with me, instead of focusing on my child's need and care. Finally, 7 o'clock comes around. So we're at 8 a.m. 7 p.m. comes around. And finally, shift change. And one nurse came up and said, Lisa, I believe you. Go home. I'll call the doctor and we'll have it looked at. So I did. I took her advice. On the way home, Hugo and I got into a big argument and I walked all the way home. So it took me about 2 hours to walk home. And get home, 10:30 at night. I think it was 10:24 actually, exactly. The phone rings. And this doctor was on the other line. She's like, how did you know that she had a fracture? And I'm like, I didn't know she had a fracture. I suspected from the amount of heat coming from her leg that she's got a broken leg or a fracture. Well, the doctor's like, she has two split fractures and a buckle fracture in her femur and around the knee. So my daughter sat 14 hours, from my knowledge. Before I walked in, I have no idea how long she had been like that. 14 hours with a buckle fracture and two split fractures while they tried to deem me crazy. Yeah. Go in, and we used to live up north, so it took about 5 hours to drive to a hospital. They sent me home with a suction tube, suction machine, and an NJ to feed her. No emergency equipment, no staff there to help me. I was a single mom at the time because Hugo's 3 kids are way across Canada, and it's a big decision for us to make, for him to just leave the kids and come here. But he eventually did, and has not hardly ever seen his kids in all those years. There's so much that's been happening. So in between that, I was fighting for my daughter's rights of everything. Basically, I was told to hold my daughter, let her die, and take lots of pictures. There's a whole different world that you have to understand. That when it comes to your child or family member, and you can be proactive, or you can start pushing for research or things like that, you don't give up. You don't give up on heart. You don't give up on cancer. You don't give up on the research. You don't give up on things, because it's what gives us the success to be able to achieve in people's lives. When I drove the 5 hours for her BiPAP, I spent a day at her BiPAP appointment right when I walked in, of them telling me I'm insane, I'm crazy, you need to be locked up, blah, blah, blah. Instead of, okay, let's get this child's BiPAP mask on and let's get her fitted, let's get everything going like we should, because this is the big hospital that advocates we bring doctors from all over the world to save all kinds of children's lives. Bullshit. They don't. And pardon my French. The care of reality is very diminished, and they will degrade you, they will deem you, they will play you as parents against each other, they will ruin your lives. Currently in hospital for suicide. Last year I went in because their dad convinces me, oh, you need to go in, you should go in, you need to go in, you need to go in. So Canada Day I went in, go in there, finally get up to my room, stand beside my bed, and had a suspicion her dad had our phones linked. It's a whole dynamic of, like I said, spider webs. And I decided to put in a message to a random person, just randomly saying just something out of spontaneous, out of my own suspicions. And he comes running back because he left and he was going home. comes running back, grabs my phone out of my hand, and he's like, take her phone away. And they did, and they were listening to him. So they took my phone away, and I had no phone, going in for suicide and depression. So they take my phone away. Well, that didn't make me feel better. So then 2 days later, I asked, can I have my phone back, please? Because they said they were going to give it back to me yesterday. They never did. And I really didn't do anything wrong to prove that there was a reason to take my phone away even. So the doctor looks at me and goes, I don't think so. Wow. And she was really snotty about it. Okay, so then Hugo starts advocating. He's like, look, I didn't realize you guys were going to permanently take her phone away. Like that, there's really no reason why you guys should have done that or take her phone away. And she's like, no. And it became a bit of a dispute between them. Like they weren't yelling or screaming or anything, but we were like, and I was like, why are you holding my personal property when I really didn't do anything wrong? And I'm coming in here for support and help, and I'm obviously not getting that right now. So then they called security, and I was sitting on my bed, just cross-legged, watching the whole thing. They called security because the doctor and Hugo were getting into an argument, but it wasn't to a point where they were yelling or screaming or anything. Security comes in. Hugo left as soon as he heard that they were calling security. The security shows up, 6 of them at the door, 6 males, and right at the doorway. So there goes my bed at the front of the room, and then I have a roommate. So it's quite a large room. They started pushing me towards the back, and they're like, oh, you need to calm down. But I was calm. I was standing there like, this is so stressful. I was just standing there like this. And I'm like, I am calm. I just need you guys to give me some space. I just need to, you guys don't, like, I don't even understand what you guys are even here for or doing, really. And they kept pushing me to the back of the room. And I'm like, do you guys not realize, have you read my file? Like, have you not realized, like, I do have trauma. I've been assaulted. I literally just need space. And I will calm down. And they're like, you're going to calm down. We're going to inject you. And I'm like, have you read my file? Like, what are you guys going to inject me with? I've had a brain bleed. Have you talked to my neurologist? Like, what's the medication you're giving me? And they're like, we're going to inject you. And they wouldn't tell me what medication it was. Like, they kept refusing to tell me what they were going to give me. So I don't even know what I was injected with to this day. So they pushed me to the back, up against the wall, and then there's the bathroom that falls to the right. And right away one grabbed me on the shoulder here, the next one grabbed me on the other arm, and they slammed me to the floor. I've had massive surgery because I did a whole hysterectomy, and I've had a massive surgery on the left side of my bladder. And so my right hip hits the floor really hard. Part of my bladder lets go a little bit. They pick me up. They slam me into my roommate's bed, head first, right exactly where I had my brain bleed. Then they picked me up again. They strapped me to my bed for an hour and a half after they injected me. Apparently this injection was supposed to knock me right out. So every time they asked how I was doing, I told them to go fuck off. My own personal thing. I know we're not supposed to be all swearing and stuff, but it's what I said. And I told one guy, and I said, would you ever let this happen to your mother? Would you ever allow somebody to treat your mother like this? So eventually came up, started wiping my face down, started washing all the sweat off, and nothing else he could do. And I was like, can I at least have something to cover my dignity here? So I'm like in soiled clothes on my bed, and my dignity stripped from me. So no, nothing. Just leaving me there starfished like a fucking... yeah, in humiliation. Sorry, I apologize, I swear so much. But after you go through 15 years of constant trauma, my daughter was donated a life-saving device called a cough assist. Well, it was sent to the hospital grabs it, puts it on the shelf, and I can't use this life-saving device for my daughter that was donated for her. They held it on the shelf for 2 years. Finally, Muscular Dystrophy got their lawyers to write a letter saying, can you please return this child's personal private property that was donated to her, that is her life-saving device. In those 2 years, though, because kids with SMA need to be coughed, in those 2 years, I was able to learn how to cough her by my own hand, feel where the secretion is, and literally start compressing the coughs, that not to a point where it hurts or anything, but very light compressions. Use the bagger, give her some breaths, and learn how to cough her by hand. They returned the cough assist when muscular dystrophy's lawyer wrote the letter to return the property. But by then, we had already been in sync with our own method. We went into foreclosure, they took our children under domestic family violence instead of, okay, mom and dad, mom's got medical issues and things like that. We can't put her on the street. Mom's been the primary care of this child since the day this child's been born and literally been like right on the ball of everything of her care. They stripped us. Instead of putting us into emergency housing, they diversed us, and they just keep saying mom's yelling and angry and things like that, instead of saying mom is upset because we came and attacked her during the visit and we didn't, the machines were malfunctioning, and mom and dad brought in a functioning machine and was showing that the one machine's not working. And plus my daughter was saying she's being left alone when she's not supposed to be being left alone. And one nurse is like, she loves being left alone, don't you? And the other nurse is like, she's a liar, and pointing in my daughter's face. Wow. My daughter is nonverbal, but she can say yes or no or express herself very clearly in a great manner. Oh, another thing, she's also very misrepresented. She can't communicate, she can't do this, and the representation is horrible, not even medical representation. And they send all these facts to a courthouse and they're like, hey, we're going to represent all of this, but we're not going to give you the facts of this child's care. We're just going to take this child. We're not going to do her care plan. We don't even know the best interest of this child. We have no knowledge how to take care of this child. We're going to leave it to the pros who are never there. The pros that we've had to advocate for against. Oh, we're just going to grab this RT and we're just going to make this RT do a transport that's never done this one with her before. And we're going to bruise her chest all the way from here, all the way with the strap all the way up to her left shoulder. That's okay. And that's probably going to get blamed on me too. Then we go in and I've got pictures of what my daughter looked like, dusky and sweating and everything. Oh, she's fluctuating, but her trach is hanging out this way, not even being stabilized properly. Of course she's fluctuating. She's not getting proper, adequate airway. When they apprehended her or took her, they didn't follow her care plan or know she had a care plan. So they basically left my daughter to drown in her own lungs. All her fluid from her mouth, everything, her oral secretions, all her secretions and everything started going back down because she doesn't have a swallowing effect. So we have to suction. And we have to suction her trach. She has chest physio. She has a cough assist that we do when she needs it, which we do by hand. They didn't know this, they said. So she aspirated in both lungs, got a chest tube in her right lung. I had to watch it. Then I go and fix all their errors daily, fixing in their errors while she's destatting, uncomfortable, no proper respiratory, dropping her canister that's hooked up to her chest tube constantly on the ground, airlock. It didn't stop. It was witnessed even by third party, and third party never said anything. Nothing of what we witnessed or the criminal negligence of the so-called best interests of a child. None of it. Just swept under the carpet and said parents are mean. That's it. Keep saying parents are aggressive, parents are aggressive, parents are aggressive, parents are aggressive. And we weren't aggressive. These incidents are continuously happening, but every time an incident happens, it's easier to say parents are aggressive than actually taking the responsibility of your action. Her failed suction machines were going over and over. I'm exhausted because I feel like I just talk out of my wahoo and nobody cares. Nobody does care, actually, to tell you the truth. Don't even know half the time why I'm on here. Lisa, Vicky, Victorious, Lohin, Facebook. Read it. Take a look and see what we go through. Caring for Maya on Netflix. It's pretty much what we are being put through and have been put through. What it takes 24 hours to take care of a child on high medical needs. I've had one in 15 years, one overnight trip to Jasper and one overnight trip to Fort Mac in 15 years. And those are the only times I've actually taken any time for myself. 15 years. It's the only trips I've ever had. Never had family vacations. Never had anything that we were able to accomplish as a family, because we're so exhausted from the system alone. Anyways, it's a whole dynamic, and that's all I can say is that, people check out my Facebook page, Vicky with a Y, Victorious Lohin, Lohin. Take a look at it. And I know it's diverse and it's complex, and I'm exhausted. I'm drained, and I feel like there is no more hope for humanity anymore. Just cruelty. There is no justice for my son, no justice for my daughter, no justice for the mental abuse that we are going through now. The physical harm and abuse my daughter went through. The mental abuse she's been suffering through just from what they have been putting her through. And I get that we went through a lot and it wasn't good for the kids because we were fighting. But when you're so exhausted, rock bottom, and you're just pulling for each other, we need to get, it's so exhausting because you're trying to stand up against this whole system that's supposed to support you that never does. They just let you fail. They just want you to fail, and they push for you to go to the edge. That's currently where we're at. I'm at. Can write every premier, prime minister, but they're just going to sweep it under the carpet. It's hell. Bloody hell. What we're going through. No family deserves to be suffering the way we're suffering. I would never wish this upon any mother, not even the most evil mother or parent I've ever seen in my life. I would never wish this kind of heartache on anyone, or this kind of pain and suffering. They just take your child, and then when we speak up for her rights of the machines not working and things like that, and bring something that does work, they restrict me again, and I can't see my children now. I have to sign basically a gag order that tells me to shut up and do what I'm told, and that I have to be what they are, basically an order that basically agrees that I am that person that they're saying that I am. Otherwise, I can't see my daughter. I have a letter from my lawyer advocate who I put on my Facebook. I leave this letter there. In her response, nothing's done. No charges laid for medical negligence or bodily harm to a minor. No proper representation. Just mom is angry. That's it. That's all we're going to focus on. Shut her down. That's how they work. Watch Caring for Maya, and you'd understand a lot more of what's happening to my family right now. I'm going to end it here. So, because there's so much, and I'm so exhausted, like I said. The only thing I can say is look at my Facebook page. Watch Caring for Maya, and you'll begin to understand a lot more.